Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to the first live stream version of Exploring 3D Experience Works. My name's Gian, here with John Martorano. As always, we're a couple of industry process consultants from SolidWorks, here to just show you some of the new latest and greatest of technology that we've been working on. So for us, this is actually not our first rodeo, even though it might be yours. We did a series like this last year where it was actually a webinar, but now we're on YouTube Live, so moving up in the world. And, John, we did so many sessions last year. We covered so many different topics. What was your favorite one?
You know, you're right, Gian. We did so many, so it's really hard to choose. But if I did have to choose, I would say, that SolidWorks visualized connected demo because I'm so drawn to things that are so visually aesthetic that you did with that demo with Mike Sandy as our special guest. So that would have to take the cake for me. What about you, Gian?
Uh, I don't know. I guess my favorite would have to be. I think it was the one where we did with Michael Steves, where we worked on simulation. That was just such a cool demo, and we had so much fun presenting that and building that live. That's where we used both our simulation tools and our design tools together. And for all of you out there watching, if you want to look at some of our past sessions, go to solidworks.com/explore. You'll see everything we did in 2020, and well, now you can just get excited for what we have in 2021. And so just having a little bit of technical difficulties here, making sure that this stream is running appropriately. But all right, beautiful. All right, first live stream, first little bit of technical difficulties, but we already overcame it. So good news ahead, right? All right, let's talk about what we're going to show today. But for those of you who are new to the series in general, we just first want to explain what is 3D Experience Works. That's probably what you might be wondering right now. And we all know SolidWorks. It's best in class 3D CAD capabilities. And we've grown quite a bit over the past quarter century to the point where we now have an entire suite of software extending the capabilities of SolidWorks through things like Visualize, Composer, Simulation, and so on. And as SolidWorks goes through its next big growth spurt, we grow into the cloud sector now, and we can do things like connect SolidWorks to the 3D Experience platform on the cloud, and we even have a new rapidly growing portfolio of fully cloud-based CAD and design apps. So whether you're a one-person operation or you're an enterprise company, we have solutions for you for CAD and beyond. But still, everything I'm talking about right now, it's all just SolidWorks. SolidWorks is one of many brands that are a part of the Dassault Systems family. And all of these other brands provide unique solutions to different industries and phases of business, and they all connect to the 3D Experience platform, which is that big blue compass you see in the middle. Now, from these other brands, SolidWorks has handpicked tools and products to really provide a top-to-bottom solution to the entire product development process. So this right here, what you see on screen, is 3D Experience Works. So what does that product development process look like? Well, in its most basic form, it's planning, it's developing, and it's releasing a product. And we all know how well SolidWorks tackles that second step when you're designing and iterating and simulating and testing. But the rest of 3D Experience Works helps to fill in those gaps to provide that true one-stop shop for all of your connected solutions for design, engineering, and beyond. If you joined us at all in 2020, you know that we've been all over the map looking at tons of different products and brands at both a high level and sometimes drilling down into the nitty gritty. But today we're sticking to our roots. Right, John, we're going to be using SolidWorks. We're checking out some of our favorite CAD functionality from 3D Experience SolidWorks, as well as some of those newer cloud-based design apps we were talking about, 3D Creator and 3D Sculptor. So that's the point of today. We want you to be able to leverage all of the 3D experience SolidWorks offered. So that if you have professional or premium, that actually includes both 3D Creator and 3D Sculptor, and they're designed to work in tandem with each other. And those workflows are getting better and improving with every new update or release of our software here. Which leads me to the next thing. You're going to get a quick peek at a lot of the new features and functionality that we have just added this weekend in our latest release. So yeah, get excited. We're going to see some really cool new things right now. And John, you're the mechanical expert. You're going to be working on the actual mechanism that makes this thing work. Why don't you kick us off? Start. What are we going to see in 3D Experience SolidWorks today?
Yeah, let me kick things off for us. So we'll start with the motor and the power cord here. And what we're basically going to do is just add a few components, right? First, we can insert a blade that we already have. We already made that. And from there, we can actually use a new tool that we'll talk about, new to this release, to insert a power button for our model because we know it needs to be there. But for this demo, we're not really going to be focusing on, necessarily the electrical wiring we're just going to focus on some of the mechanical aspects. And then what we'll do is we'll add some fasteners. And to finish things off, we are actually going to need to create a new part. So let's start out with a little bit of background. We have a rotary motor in this case, as you see highlighted on the screen in red. And what we're going to need to do is take this rotary motion and somehow convert it into a linear motion to move the blade from side to side. So to get a better picture of this, let's go ahead and animate what we're looking at. So this is the rotary motor that we're working with. So we need to design a component like you see on screen that will take this and follow that rotary motor, then moving the component side to side. And this component that we'll make will be attached to our blade, which is how our razor operates. So now that we got a better picture of what we're looking at here, let's go back to our plan for modeling. So this is the component that we're going to need to create. And then after we create the component, well, we can't really hand this over to the end consumer like this, right, Gian? We're going to need some stylish enclosure, and that's the magic of 3D Sculptor, right, Gian?
Exactly. Yeah, we got to make this thing look good, but we need to mount these things to something, this motor and everything. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to pick things up in 3D Sculptor using the model that you create from 3D Experience SolidWorks, and I already have an idea in my head of what I want this enclosure to look like, and I'm going to use 3D Sculptor to bring that idea to life. And then there's so many different ways that we could do this to then take this enclosure and actually make it functional. Split it up into a top and bottom cover, add our holes for fasteners and whatnot. But I'm going to use 3D Creator. I'm going to switch from 3D Sculptor to 3D Creator to add some of those parametric features that are really going to bring this model to life and make it usable. So with that, John, I'm tired of talking. I want to see some cool stuff already. Are you ready to show us some
I
3D Experience SolidWorks?
I think I am. Yeah. Let's jump into 3D Experience SolidWorks. So I've actually already been working on this assembly, and I've added it to a task that I'm already under, so I don't have to search for it. I can open up right into this session, and what I'll be starting with is, as we talked about, the motor shaft and the power cord. So take a look at my attachments though. These are the blades that I need for this design. So we can open up these the same way, which will save us a click or two in inserting them into the assembly. And here's the first little pro tip that I'm going to throw in there. When working with multiple SOLIDWORKS files at once, we can use the Control plus the Tab button to switch between open files. And this is similar to using the Alt-Tab shortcut in Windows. Um, also, as long as I hold the Control key, I can click Tab to change my selection and really just click the one that I want. So we want to insert these blades we just opened. We can use the Access rotation buttons in the lower left-hand corner to adjust the orientation. And that's all before I just drop the part into the assembly. So there are really a lot of different ways that I could position this if you think about it. But what I think makes most sense is basically just constraining them with a sketch because Gian's going to make that enclosure. So I'm going to use this sketch that I'm making to drive the position of the sketch. So I'm just going to add a couple dimensions. And after we add all of the dimensions, we'll be able to add some mates to it, which is pretty simple. So I won't waste time showing you all the mates because not only are we going to do this a little bit down the road, but they also are relatively simple. So as you can see here, I'm going to click on an edge, and then I'm going to click on a vertex, and we just want them to touch, so it's pretty simple. And there is a lot left to do, though. So let's go ahead and add the power button, for instance.
Wait, John, are you telling me that you're going to model a whole power switch right now and add it in there?
No, no, I'm not going to do that. I could. I love modeling, but and a much easier way to do that would be to use part supply, which in reality is just it's a large catalog of switches and electrical mechanical devices that I have access to now, which is new as of this latest release. So you can see this is all part of the 3D Experience Marketplace. And as I said before, it gives you access to a huge catalog of all different types of components. And basically, I'm just exploring this to just give you a sense for what you can expect here. It's kind of like having a little McMaster inside of SolidWorks. I mean, right, Gian?
Yeah, basically. That's
Yeah.
pretty cool.
So what I'm going to do in this case actually is I'm going to search to find the push power switch that will work for our design. I can even take a look at the specs, and I'm just going to insert the part into my assembly and orient it in such a way that I can go ahead and add some mates. We kind of already covered this before. It's just a matter of selecting some faces and choosing the mate that pops up, because 3D Experience SolidWorks is pretty smart and knows what we're looking for here. All right, so we're going to need to constrain this motor enclosure with some screws. So for all of you SolidWorks users, you're very familiar with Toolbox, but it's now in 3D Experience SolidWorks. For those of you who don't know, it's basically like having an entire machinist library right at the palm of your fingertips. You can see as I drag and drop a screw in there, it's automatically going to resize to fit the hole that I need, which saves time for modeling and mating standard components. And as I said before, it is the latest functionality as of this latest release. So just because, you know, it automatically sized my screw for me, I can still adjust the length. And basically, I'm going to add these components elsewhere in the model as necessary. But I want to draw your attention now to this side-to-side motion of the blade. We need to figure out a way to constrain this because it can't just move side to side forever. But before I do this, I know we've covered a lot already. So, Gian, what do you think? Maybe it's a good time to check out the chat and see.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, John. Let's check out the chat, see if we got any questions. No, not too many questions just yet. A lot of people look happy to be here. Oh, wow. Oh, there's our boss, John. We got to make sure we do a good job. He's watching. Hey, Brian.
All
Yeah,
right.
I
Well, if
think,
we don't have any questions, I guess we will just continue moving on.
yeah, let's go for it, John. Whenever you're ready.
All right. So just a quick recap. Again, we need to kind of constrain that side-to-side motion of that blade. So that's exactly what we'll be doing next. To do this, I need to create that new component. So I'm going to do this right in the context of our existing assembly. I'm going to call it shaft connector. And what we're going to do is be prompted to choose a face or plane to set as the origin for this new part. And what I'm going to choose is the face of the shaft. So basically what I'm doing is just using pre-existing geometry to reference this new sketch. And I'm just going to add a couple dimensions, and from there, we can continue modeling.
Wow. Okay. So, John, this is that slot that you were talking about in the beginning, right? Where we're going to take this vertical slot and that's going to allow us to translate rotary motion into the linear motion, right?
Absolutely, yeah. This is that slot that's going to allow us to take that motion and translate it into a linear motion. So it's kind of
Perfect.
all the pieces are coming together, right, Gian?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we're really cutting to the chase today, moving quick. So a lot more to show. Let's keep it going.
Alrighty, so the next sketch will be the side profile. And what I'm actually going to do is attach the sketch to the bottom blade. So that way, if I adjust the orientation of the blade later on down the road, my component will update with it. So this is just best overall design intent to avoid making unnecessary changes later down the line. I'll finish the side profile with another rectangle to house my slot. And then I'm going to actually draw some line segments to connect the two rectangles. So what I really love is when I go back to my original point, I can easily start to draw an arc just by placing my cursor again back at that last point that I sketched. So this saves a lot of time and clicks, all in the name of rounding off some corners. So I'm going to add some dimensions next. And then it's time for my big pro tip, the S key. For all of you SOLIDWORKS users, you're very familiar with this one, but if you press the S key, it pulls up a shortcut menu, and it lets me jump into things like the trim command in this instance. And again, this just keeps my model focused on where I should be, right in the graphics area. So I'm going to round off some corners relatively easily just by selecting a vertex.
Wow,
And
with
of
that
course,
S
once
key
I like
again.
those changes, I can just go ahead and click the green check. Now for the fun, all the fun is in bringing it from 2D to 3D. So I'm going to use an extrude feature. Now, I'm not going to choose a mid-plane extrude or anything fancy because I'm simply going to model half of this component instead because I'm going to add some detail to this half so then I could just basically mirror the other half without having to duplicate any of my efforts. And this is just a great tip for design intent in general. So you don't waste time modeling the whole thing, you know, just model half, mirror the other half. So next, let's use that slot sketch from the beginning to cut a slot hole through this component. You can see in the graphics area, we have a gray arrow. I'm going to flip the direction. When I turn the model around, I can actually drag this arrow as another option to choose the length of the feature that I have. So this not only provides more control, but again, just keeps my mouse right where I want it to be in that graphics area. All right, so I think that looks good. We'll hit the green check mark and continue. I think I know the rest of the dimensions that I need to finish this model, but everything looks a little busy right now. So what I'm going to do is actually just isolate some components. So my graphics area, you know, we just don't want it to be too crowded. We want to be able to focus specifically on this part. So after I hide it, we can move in the face, the front face that we want to actually work with here. And we're going to start a sketch on this face using a center slot. And here's another tip for design intent. I'm going to actually drive the dimension of this slot just by adding a collinear relationship. So that is selecting two edges there, a line and an edge, and just adding that collinear relationship. So that way, if it changes later down the road, our slot will update with it. I'll add my length dimension, and then what I want to do is actually sketch a couple circles. And yet another little tip here, we can, after we draw our two circles, we can basically select the entities in the graphics area that we want, and we're given options just like we would to add a mate. In this case, we actually want to add an equals relationship. So if I add the equals relationship and then I go to add a dimension, you'll notice that if I change one circle, the other changes with it. So let's go ahead and extrude this, and I'm going to extrude that up to the vertex from our previous sketch there to terminate this feature. All right. So we're going to add one more circular extrusion just to hug that stabilizing rod a little bit more. And we're going to use that handy S key again. But you'll notice this time we don't get sketch options. We get options for features like fillet. So we're adding a fillet. And I think this is another good place to fast forward a little bit just because, you know, it's a good spot to do that. And finally, as promised, this is pretty rewarding. We get to actually mirror the other half of the component. And we get to see that with a nice yellow propagation there. And boom. What do you think about that, Gian? I mean, we were able to create a component relatively quickly, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, that looks awesome, John. We went
Yeah.
really far in just a couple minutes.
Yeah. Well, you know, this component, it doesn't just stand alone, right? It is a part of that greater assembly. So let's keep moving. What we want to do is now exit this isolated view, and we're actually going to assign a material to it. So what I could do is take advantage of some of my favorites and my favorite materials, but I'm going to choose to open up the material library and choose from there. So I'm going to put a nice ABS plastic on this and we'll move along. We're going to now add the mates. So notice I'm clicking a face. I'm going to hold my control key, click the other face, and we get a bunch of options, including the advanced mate for slot, which is exactly what we want. So 3D Experience SolidWorks is really just that smart to know exactly how you want this component to behave in the assembly.
Nice. Wow.
So we'll add a couple more mates. Now I don't want this to be redundant, so we did speed things up again, but once I have it all mated up, we're actually going to be able to see how the motion of this assembly works. Now, I could do a motion study, but I just want to know quickly if this thing will work. So you could see I'm just clicking and dragging there, and we get a real-time display of how this assembly actually works mechanically. I mean, that's pretty amazing, right, Gian?
That is pretty awesome, John. And yeah, that looks like just what we're looking for.
Absolutely, yeah. So that's also important to mention. Yeah, this is what we're looking for, but if it wasn't, we could quickly go in and make changes as necessary. But I think we're just about done. The only thing left to do really is to save it. So in the 3D Experience pane on the right, I'm going to grab the upper level assembly and I'll click Save with Options. And this way I can actually see what's changed, what hasn't. There's even an option for me to release my reservation of the model so Gian can have at it next. So in the lower left-hand corner, I'm going to go ahead and release reservations. And then I'm just going to click Save. And basically, there's only really just one thing left to do is just to let him know that I'm all set with this. So again, I'm going to go back into my tasks. My assembly was already attached as the deliverable previously, so there's no sense in attaching it again. Just simply drag it from in work to completed, and boom, isn't that satisfying? Big weight off my shoulders here.
Oh,
And now it's all yours, Gian, to see what you have in mind for that stylish enclosure.
oh yeah, John, I can't wait. Can't wait to show that. I just want to first quickly just check out the chat and see what's going on.
All right.
So, oh great, looks like we have, oh yeah, so one question from Janie. Yeah, is that a hair cutter? Yes, it is. It's a pair of, I mean, they're called very many things. You know, the typical ones that actually cut your hair, I call them clippers. This particular one I would call an edger, but we're calling it the trimmer here, beard trimmer, hair trimmer. But yeah, that's what we're trying to accomplish here is designing that basically from start to finish. And it looks like we have another question from Rudolph asking, is SolidWorks Connected a different version of SolidWorks, or is it the same version which is connected to the 3D Experience platform? Well, you already have the answer, the second part of your question. It's the same SolidWorks you know and love, but connected to the 3D Experience platform. And John, I think that there's a couple more questions, but I want to keep things moving. We'll get to those as we keep moving along in here. I want to show some of the cool stuff in 3D Sculptor now. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into 3D Sculptor and create. I'm just going to start with a new component. I'm going to call this my trimmer enclosure. And then I'm going to go back to my task because I was on the task that you were working on. So I can see when that was done. I see that you completed it, and I can even grab that deliverable. I can grab the model that you used there. And what I'm going to do is just take it, click it, drag it, and drop it across tabs into my design app and insert it. I could have opened it as well, but I want to insert this because I want to create my enclosure around this thing. So what you might notice first off here is some of these components, in fact, most of these components all have black edge outlines. They all kind of have a black colored edge, whereas the component that my mouse is hovering over, the one that John just created, that one actually has some blue outlines on it because the geometry hasn't been converted yet. So if you use 3D Creator or 3D Sculptor or 3D Experience SolidWorks, you might have heard of another app called the Derived Format Converter. So that's the app that I'm going to use to generate the derived output from the SolidWorks data so that I can reference all of that geometry, all of the things that John just did. If I convert all that geometry, now I can actually use it in in my assembly and those reference it in sketches and in features. So I'm going to request that that one be generated, a derived output for the component that John just made. And that's why we threw this in, because it's another new enhancement to the user interface that now it lets you know when it's done, and even gives you a button to resolve the geometry now. And you'll see your model will turn to black edges. We can start using those edges in our sketches and features. So now that we've gotten that out of the way, maybe I want to hide that axis quick, and then let's get into the subdivision stuff. Let's get into the cool part of this modeling. Now, subdivision modeling, inherently you start with these primitive shapes, and I'm going to start with the box shape. Now, when I throw it in here, I'm going to throw it on our mid plane here, our YZ plane, and I'm going to make it go about the mid plane just to help us with symmetry later. And then you just saw I could scale it uniformly or in any of these three principal directions with those arrows. And then I can even toggle these little buttons here to control how many control segments or how many loops I have going around this model. But that looks good enough for now. I'm going to accept that, and let's just keep moving on. I can go to different orthogonal views just by hitting the the faces of that chair in the corner. And then this tool I'm using is called the robot. We use it to translate with the arrows, to rotate with those arcs, and to scale with those points at the end of the arrows that you just saw. Now I'm gonna turn on transparency a little bit. I want to be able to see these components inside so I can model around them. And then I also want to just add symmetry about that YZ plane we were talking about. And that's going to put a new loop around our model here. And it's going to show in green so that I know that, hey, there's symmetry turned on around that loop. So everything will be acting about that one plane, our symmetry there. Now, clicking any of the faces of that chair allows us to get to that orthogonal view. And I just used the shift arrow keys to switch between different orthogonal views, which you can do in SolidWorks as well. So when you need to jump from profile to profile, that's a huge time saver. You know, you don't even need to worry about using your mouse or anything. Just use your keyboard. But that's a big help in X-Shape. Another cool feature we can do in X-Shape is add sharp edges. So you might have thought that maybe you can only just create, you know, one really organic surface with this, but no, this is now, we now have almost two independent surfaces just connecting this one body. So that's just however you choose to model it. And then as you need to have more control over things, you know, you can use our line by line command, which is similar to the functionality of the robot, but it allows you to align all of these points that I selected to each other, but then control them all with the endpoints and the midpoint of that line that I'm just manipulating right now. So that really helps us get a little bit of a finer degree of control over our model here. So moving on, there isn't much else in terms of tools. You know, it's mostly just using the robot to slowly sculpt this thing into the shape that we want. Now, another point about the robot, sometimes the arrows aren't exactly pointing in the direction that you want them to. Now, this is because it's based on your selection. So if you select a single point, it's going to give you arrows that point, you know, directly normal to the surface, and then in the lateral and transverse directions, which is what you're seeing right now. But maybe I need to move it only in the X, Y, or Z direction. Well, you can toggle that on just by right-clicking on the robot, and now it will keep you in that mode, only moving in the X, Y, or Z direction until you change it. All right, adding more loops. So, you know, the more detail we add, the more control loops we need. So I'm just going to use the insert loops command, which also exists down below in the action bar, but you can click it right in our shortcuts as well to quickly just go from making adjustments to adding that we're looking for. So as we continue along here, I know that I'm going to need a parting line around this. This is going to be an injection molded part, and we're not going to do everything to prep it for injection molding, but we want to be smart about how we model this thing so that, you know, when the time comes, you know, most of our work is already done. So that's why I'm going to add a crease around this whole side of the model so that, you know, we can get the draft that we're looking for, but you'll see more on that later. Now, the next thing I want to show you is how you can get more localized control over a certain area in the model, and that's using the subdivide feature. So the subdivide feature just takes these 4 faces and will split them into a new number of faces. In this case, I think it's going to be about 14, but this is where the term subdivision modeling comes from. So it'll basically take an offset of the edges you selected and place those within. And then you can grab, control, push and pull those however you'd like to get that shape that you're looking for. And that'll help us, stay organized with our power button. All right, we're going to turn on draft analysis, do a quick manufacturability check. We already have the ZX plane selected, and the yellow color is what's bothering me. That's where we need to have more draft. And the best part about 3D Sculptor, in my opinion, I love this. I love it's dynamic. It changes as you make changes, the draft analysis updates, which is just
So
so
you're
cool.
saying all you got to do is pick and drag a couple faces, push and pull it, and it updates real time.
Exactly. That's
Wow.
exactly what I'm saying, John. It makes it so much easier for the user. But that's not even the coolest thing. I think that zebra stripes are another really cool feature that a lot of our SolidWorks users are familiar with, but it's a great tool for really checking and understanding the behavior of your surfaces. And really, we have a few different surfaces going on here because of the creases that we added. So this is how we can really understand the behavior.
So Gian, I understand that SolidWorks users may be familiar with this, but how about for non-existing users? Can you give a quick analysis on maybe how you would interpret this right now?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So when these zebra stripes get very flat or you just get large spaces in between them, like for instance, right in the center of the screen right now where it's very white, that just means that surface is getting very close to planar. And the more crazy and kind of wacky the surface starts to look, the more the stripes start to all come together at a certain point. That's where how you know that you might have kind of a puckering surface there, or you just have a very dramatic change in that surface at that point, which, may or may not be what you're looking for. But I think we can keep moving on from here. I do want to just make sure our parting line is lined up with our XZ plane. Now we don't have to do that. That's not like a necessity for making injection molding parts, though it does make our life easier both as a designer and manufacturing this thing later. It is easier with a nice flat parting line the way you see here. So maybe I want to grab that plane, but I can't select through my subdivision body. Well, another new feature, you can now toggle on and off the ability to select through the subdivision body. And then I can align it to geometry or the body. In this case, I'm actually just going to align it to the geometry. I want to snap that edge right to our plane. And we can go to our side view and see how that looks. It looks like it did the job. So I think I'm ready to exit the subdivision environment. I think I'm done with 3D Sculptor for now. I think it's time to add some parametric features by switching to 3D Creator. But before we do that, I'm just going to check quickly. I want to check on the chat and see what we have going on. So it looks like we have one question. Neil is asking us, which types of advanced mates specifically did you use for the mechanism? Well, you might have noticed before that we had a rod going through part of that shaft connector. So that's kind of what restricted it from moving up and down. So the only advanced mate we actually needed to use was that slot mate that you saw us put in. Everything else was either coincident or concentric, which coincident, if you don't know, is just taking, 2 faces and making them touch. And concentric is the same thing, just with circles, just lining up the center points of circles. So that's most of what the mates were in this entire assembly. And I think that the slot mate might have been the only advanced mate in this entire assembly. So really keeping it nice and simple. Um, and looks like we have another question from Jerby. X-Shape, can you show me if there's an undo button if you accidentally drag the robot? Of course, yes. We have the undo button, Control Z, or the undo button on screen works perfectly with X-Shape, with 3D Sculptor. And I'll tell you something else that's really exciting, new as of this past weekend, our latest release. So previous to this weekend, once you hit exit on the subdivision environment, you actually wouldn't be able to hit undo anymore. But since the latest release, we've enhanced it. Now it does not matter if you exit, you have basically unlimited undo capabilities again. So that's just, again, giving more power to the user. I think that that's all it for questions right now. I'm gonna go back to full screen and keep moving along with this demo. We're getting very close to the end. I know we're showing a lot of stuff, but we truly are cutting to the chase today and just showing you the real cool things that we're really excited about. All right, so now I'm in XDesign, part of 3D Creator, and the first thing I want to do, I want to cut away the extra material that's kind of interfering with my blade. So I hid that, I hid our subdivision body, and I'm using convert entities. I'm not creating new sketches. I don't have to do that. I can recycle as much of the geometry as I can that John has left me here. And now I'm just going to cut through all in both directions. Now my body is hidden, so I could actually see it, see what I was doing before. But if I show that, there you can see the cut that we just made with, yeah, just those two planes and our little fillet there. But let's shell this thing out. Let's give it a nice uniform wall thickness of about 1 millimeter. I'm going to shell it outward so that we don't crowd our components in there. And I'm just going to grab the faces that I want to get rid of. And voila, there we are. We have our shelled out body. This is still early in our steps here, but now I want to split this into two. We're going to need a top and a bottom cover for this. So I'm going to use the same plane that I aligned all my edges to in 3D Sculptor. I'm going to use that plane to just split this into two. And now, time for some multi-body modeling. So we're still in one component, but I'm going to take this body, I'm going to take the bottom cover, and I'm going to make a body. This is a command that has seen some enhancements as of the latest release, and it's very easy to use. It helps us a ton with multi-body modeling. So as I do this, it's going to say, okay, I see the body at that point. I'm going to take that body as a linked body, so not with any of the design features, but just a linked body, and put it into a new ordered geometric set, which you can see on screen right now. I just highlighted both of our new ordered geometric sets. We have one for the top cover and one for the bottom cover. And all those really are, I'm going to call them OGSs from now on. And OGSs, it's like, it's almost like your design train of thought. It's your feature history, but you can pick it up and create a new one, a new string of features from really anywhere in the model. Using a body the way I just did, and there are so many other ways. But now I'm going to continue on that train of thought and start adding some of those parametric features to our bottom cover. So I'll begin with a few circles. Notice how I can put it right on a point in the subdivision body. I can use those points. I can use the geometry to my advantage. And now I'm just going to add some dimensions. I'll use 3 millimeters here. Say we're going to use some M3 holes or some M3 screws or something to keep this together. And then we're going to extrude these right up to the body. So remember how we said that you can always mirror to the other side? Well, we're going to do that later. So we only need to add holes on one side of our enclosure for now. And now let's move on to start including some of the rest, like the screws that John already put in there. I'm going to take those edges, I'm going to convert them. I'm going to use those to my advantage so I don't have to do any sketching. And then here's the S key again. The S key is not just for SolidWorks. It's for 3D Creator. It's for 3D Sculptor. It's really anything SolidWorks can get its hands on. You could probably bet that the S key is going to be pretty darn helpful. So in this case, it's giving me a bunch of sketch shortcuts. So I'm going to use the offset. And I could drag that manually, but I think I'll just do 2.5 millimeters. I'll just type that in. And yeah, I think that looks good. So I'm going to accept that and extrude it up to our body again. But this time I'm going to have it start from that bottom face of our motor that you just saw me select, that's now highlighted in orange. So that's how we can make sure that our feature is always going to work with this trimmer, with the mechanism that John made, because it's always going to be between the body and the body of our bottom cover and the face of the motor that we just selected. So that looks good. I'm going to go ahead and accept that. So I want to make sure that these are sturdy enough. I'm going to add some rib features, but I need some sketches to do that first. So these are really just, I'm going to make some walls from these two line segments I just made. And I'm going to use the rib command to turn those into 3D geometry. Maybe 2 millimeters will do it. And that just, you can see it creates a wall that extends the edges to what your sketch is touching. And yeah, maybe 2.5 will be better. Perfect. I could have added draft to that if I wanted to. In fact, draft is very important in every step of this design for prepping this for injection molding. But we're skipping a lot of that because we want to keep things going. We want to show you a fast-paced demo where you get to see a lot, a lot all at once. So that's why we're cutting to the chase. So again, I'm converting entities instead of creating new sketches so that I can just minimize the work that I have to do. John already did it. He already put it in there, so why not use it? And then a few extrude commands will get us the cavity or the pocket that we're looking for that power button. So I think one more through hole for the button, and then that area is pretty much done. But now it's time to get to prep the area with the power cord. I need a little bit more material there, so I'm going to first do an extrude that adds some material here, and then I'm going to use some subtractive modeling techniques to then kind of work my way back and cut away the shape of this power cord. Notice I'm using my shift arrow keys again, and I just did another convert entities. So again, keeping this nice and easy. And now, oh, this is such a cool part of the demo. Now, you might not know this if you don't use 3D Creator too much. It's been moving, it's been growing and being enhanced so quickly. Like huge shout out to our research and development. It really is going fast and it's smart. So right here, it already knows that I likely want to have a cut in this situation. So it's already toggled on that switch, but I could turn it off if I wanted to. It's also giving me the option to just cut through everything, which is in fact what I want to do. So I can just say, yes, I'm gonna toggle that on and then hit the green check. And now I don't even have to jump into the dialog box. It's already done. I just created a feature without even having to go into this dialog box, which just saves me time. So again, I'm gonna do one more cut through here to get that lip of our power cord. And yeah, we've come a very far way in a very short amount of time. Another new enhancement are in some of the breadcrumbs and being able to turn on and off transparency. So we have a lot of UI enhancements like this, really every release that are just making it easier for designers to design, for engineers to engineer, for you to just get your job done using less clicks. All right, so fast forwarding a bit, I'm going to say we've already done our top cover. You just saw how I did the bottom. The top is really no different. So we're going to say, all right, we got our top cover, we got our bottom cover, but now we have 3 OGSs. We have 3 of those ordered geometric sets again in our one component, but I need separate components. I need 2 different components for the top and bottom. So I'm going to use the make component command, which you can get through the right click menu. And I'm going to make this thing a component. And there's a couple ways that we could do this. So right now, you can see in the dialog box, I could do it as features, or I could do it as a linked body. So if I do it as features, that means basically I want to take all of those features, all the feature history in my top cover OGS. I'm going to take that all and I'm going to put it into a new component, and I'm going to take all those features with me into the new component. Now, that might be what you want to do, but the other option is to do a linked body, which is where, once again, you leave all your feature history in this component, and you'll just have a linked body with no feature history in your new component. And in this case, I'm going to utilize the second option so that I can only have to manage having one component out at a time if I want to make changes or something. So now I don't have to worry about juggling 3 different components. I can do all my editing in one, and it will propagate out to my top and bottom cover. And now we have those 3 components, or those 2 new components, the top cover and the bottom cover, and I can maneuver them and move them independently. So just to show you some more of that detail, in some of the work that we just did to the top and bottom cover. Let's zoom in there a little bit and scroll around. Yeah. Oh yeah. Look at all that detail, John. We've come a long way, huh?
Wow. Yeah, it looks incredible.
Yeah, and I think that we're just about done here. So I'm going to Control Z to get rid of those move commands that I just did. And now I just want to close the loop with the team, just like you did, John. You put it back into your task and then dragged it to done, just like you should. So I'm going to do the same thing. But my tasks are actually in a different tab of the dashboard that I'm working in right now. So another new enhancement, awesome enhancement. We can now drag and drop from the design manager to just about anywhere in the platform, in the 3D Experience platform that can accept that file. So in this case, I'm going to take my trimmer enclosure, I'm going to drag and drop it across tabs into our create trimmer enclosure task.
Wow.
And now it's been added as a deliverable. And John, you said it best. The best part of this, my favorite part, dragging it from in work to completed. That's pretty cool, huh, John?
Yeah, absolutely, Gian. And I'm looking at the chat here. It seems like we're a little bit light on questions, but definitely want to take this as an opportunity to maybe wrap up what we just saw. Because I mean, as you said, Gian, we just did so much in such a little amount of time.
Oh, incredible amount of things that we just covered. So you can
Yeah.
always add your comments later too. Just want to point that out. You can always ask questions later and we will do our best to answer those. So yeah,
All
sorry,
right.
John, go ahead and wrap us up when you're ready.
Yeah, so to bring us home, we just want to remember the three tools we use, mainly 3D Experience SolidWorks, which is connected to the cloud, and then we have 3D Creator and 3D Sculptor, which is they're fully cloud-based. So why did we show this design? Well, a couple different reasons. Whether you're an existing customer or non-existing customer, we think that you could, um, get benefit out of maybe leveraging a new workflow with the 3D Experience off SolidWorks offers. Um, and then maybe there's also a chance you got some quick peek into some new features and functionality that you weren't aware of. So, we hope you definitely got the benefit. And if you want to learn more, there'll be a link in the description. And that way you can get more information about basically all the tools that we just used today. So, with that being said, before we do wrap things up, a special thanks to Sarah Zuckerman and Andrew Gross. They helped behind the scenes today. You can't see them, but big shout out to them for making today's production a big success. Very thankful for you guys. And very thankful for you all who tuned in today. And we will see you again on March 4th, 2021. And we're going to leave you in a bit of a suspense here as to what we'll be presenting, but you can be sure it'll revolve around something design based. So we'll see you on March 4th. Thanks,
Oh
everyone.
yeah.